landmark work, Satyagraha, which was produced in 1980, has been set to text in ancient Sanskrit using the scriptures Bhagavad Gita. And Satyagraha opened last Friday at the Metropolitan Opera in Lincoln Center. Before the opening night, two men who have been instrumental in bringing Satyagraha to the Met, Stanley Bergman, CEO of Henry Schein, a multi-billion-dollar company, the largest distributor of healthcare products in North America and Europe, as well as Harry Anand, who is the first Indian American mayor in Laurel Hollow of Long Island. These are the two men who are instrumental in bringing Satyagraha to the Met. I met up with them in Stanley Bergman's home in Manhattan, along with the ambassadors to the United Nations of South Africa as well as India. Let's take a look at Satyagraha opening night at the Lincoln Center, as well as some excerpts from the interview with these dignitaries. I'm here at Stanley Bergman's place in Manhattan, and joining me today is one of the hosts who is instrumental in getting Satyagraha to be showcased at the Metropolitan Opera, Mr. Harry Anand, one of the first Indian American mayors in Laurel Hollow of Long Island. It's a big accolade to you. Congratulations. Today is the opening night. Very compelling work of filled glass, and you with Mr. Bergman were instrumental in getting it over here. Tell us the genesis behind it.
A very historic performance of Satyagraha for the very first time in New York City. Stanley Bergman and myself, we are very close friends, and we thought, why not co-sponsor the premiere event of this great opera. So that's what we are doing, and as you have seen, it's the Indian community as well as a lot of very prominent people from the South African community who are here today, including the ambassador of South Africa, our DCM Ambassador Jassal, Neelam Deo, and many other prominent members of the Indian as well as South African communities. I think for this year their schedule is quite full, but depending upon the response that they get, which we have already seen, they have completely, the performances have been sold out. I think that would provide them an initiative to bring it back. So.
As a mayor, do you think this is one of your most important contributions?
Yes, Rene, and I think this is very interesting, and I've always been very fond of operas, and also Mahatma Gandhi has been a great inspiration to all of us who come from India. So I think it's really wonderful to have this kind of event here. So, Mahatma Gandhi, if you look at him as an individual, a lot of his moral and intellectual values came as a combination of his roots from India and South Africa. And I remember one line from Mr. Nelson Mandela, and he once said that India gave South Africa Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi, and South Africa gave India back Mahatma Gandhi. So a lot of development of Gandhi took place in South Africa. So this is really wonderful to see this happening right here in New York City.
you're spearheading with Mr. Harry Anand the dynamic work of Philip Glass. Tell us your thoughts and what went on in your mind when you thought, let's put Satyagraha right for New Yorkers here?
Well, of course, this opera speaks to one of the miracles of the 20th century, namely the birth of the largest democracy in the world, India, the birth of one of the most potentially troublesome democracies that boomed and flourished, the South African democracy. And what better way to celebrate the life of Gandhi than in an opera, which both Mayor Anand and I love, and what better place than at the Metropolitan Opera, which is a place that is a very special place. So what a better place to celebrate the democracy of India, the democracy of South Africa, in the Metropolitan Opera, in the greatest city in the world, which of course is the place which is housed, which is the city of New York, which is the commercial center of the country that gave birth to democracy. So tonight's a celebration of democracy, which Gandhi played such a big role in creating.
On a personal note, Mr. Steinberg, is Gandhi's philosophy a big influence in your life?
Yes, I think the Gandhi philosophy, which gave birth to, of course, the civil rights movement in the United States, and of course to the freedom struggle in South Africa. So the 20th century would probably have looked a lot different if it were not for Mahatma Gandhi.
And are you going to continue with Satyagraha maybe next year as well?
I believe the Met will have it for probably for 3 seasons, yes.
Tell us, has the Gandhian philosophy of ahimsa, truth, and nonviolence been a big influence on your life?
A huge one, actually. My family went from India to South Africa because my great-grandfather was invited by Gandhi to bring his children and have them taught. So my grandfather was a student of Gandhi's in South Africa, and my family was brought up amongst all of those principles and spent many years in the passive resistance movement in South Africa. So it's a very, very big part of my family's history, and in fact, much of the success that I've had in my own career, I have to sort of look back and talk about the struggles that my own family had and the sort of rewards that I may be reaping for the work that they've done. And that was very much due to the influence of Gandhi on our family.
There's been a personal motivation for you as well. There's been a lot of resurgence of interest in Gandhian philosophy, in the way of looking at peace and nonviolence and tolerance, especially in this age of discord. Do you feel that the media has this big responsibility? Mahatma Gandhi did it as the Indian opinion, and we in the media could really strive forward and continue with his ideals.
Absolutely, and it's one of those things that I think is gaining momentum around the world when you look at philosophies of whether it's Mandela or Gandhi or Martin Luther King, whose assassination we've just marked. The fact is, a lot of the same issues that they were bringing up have reared their heads in other ways today. So I think the world is sort of hungry for philosophies that sort of engender peace and help people understand each other and cause them to understand each other and allow them a way to express that is not hurtful to the world but is inclusive and makes people understand. And I think just recently, because of these things, I've also gone back and done some of my own reading about Gandhian philosophy, and it makes sense that the world would want to take a look at that. It's a great opportunity, and if in the media there's an opportunity to let people understand that that might be relevant today worldwide, then I think that's a good responsibility to take on.
Non-violence and going through peace, people walk all over you. It's too much of passivity. We need that aggression. What is your take on that, especially in this field that we are living in and the world that we are living in?
It's unclear that aggression necessarily has worked. I mean, I think the world is a much more complicated place than we'd like to think it is. The powerful don't always win the way they want to win. So there's some sense that perhaps an understanding, a mutual understanding of the needs of everybody who's involved in a dispute might be a better way to solve the problem, and that violence may not be the best way to do that. And when you look back on history and the people we revere, we have had great reverence for those who did turn the other cheek, or those who persevered. It probably takes longer, but in the end, the legacy remains. We talk about people like Gandhi who have been gone for so long because of the good that they have done. So I suspect it's never going to be out of fashion to think about those alternatives, and we should at this point when there's so much conflict in the world.
That resurgence of interest in these principles is going to create a better world for all of us, hopefully?
Yeah, well, I think it will. And one of the signs is that, in the United Nations, which ought to be concerned, with peace and is very often actually concerned with peace, it was unanimously, it adopted a resolution declaring October 2 as the International Day of Nonviolence. And as you know, the Honorable Mrs. Sonia Gandhi, she spoke last year, and this year again, October 2 would be celebrated as the International Day of Nonviolence. And I think, what you said is very, very apt, because the problems that we are facing today, that is the key thing. The problems that we are facing, whether in terms of, the problem of natural resources, whether even more, it is the existential crisis that the species actually faces in terms of climate change and global warming. And Mahatma Gandhi was the first in modern times, right at the beginning of the 20th century, to actually foresee these problems and to suggest solutions, which unfortunately were not adopted at that time. But I think the world needs to revisit those to see what we can do in terms of solving, or at least alleviating, the problems that we face.
It's a timely piece. He wants to do contemporary works every year, but I think this is really a different audience, and that is appealing to him. The Metropolitan Opera is doing that in many areas. We, in 1 year, reach 1 million people in the Opera House. This year alone, through our high-definition transmissions that go to movie theaters across the country. I don't know if they do in India. I don't think so, but I hope that after this, perhaps they will. We have doubled our paying audience in 1 year, because there'll be almost 1 million people that have paid to go to these performances around the world. So it's an exciting time for the opera.
And the real issue was, what is it that you can learn from this great man in terms of his contribution towards peaceful resolution of conflicts? I think that was at the center of that. How do you deal complicated, contracted conflict and avoid responding in a manner that will breed the very violence that you are trying to respond against? But say that there is a particular way which you can follow, which is peaceful forms of struggle to make your point, whatever consequences you suffer. arrests and beatings, and some people died even here. We had the same thing in South Africa. And I think it's a legacy that as human beings should not forget. Now the fact that there is this opera again in celebrating his life and us coming together to go and watch it, I think this is a wonderful experience for me, something that will always add to my admiration of and pride the fact that my country is associated with this great man.
Well, as a Jain, I like to take little credit that he was born, brought up and raised in an area where Jains were majority, and I wouldn't suspect that he got influenced by all those things. And very honestly, when we are giving gift to Pope, on the top, we have Gandhi's bust on that one. And non-violence to Jains is the most important thing. So this is, whether you talk about the peace or Satyagraha, it has to be first non-violence first, and then those things come. So that's my personal feeling about it.
Vaisakhi, the beginning of the new year, was celebrated with great gusto and pride by Punjabis all around the tri-state